Emily sat by the side of the bustling market street, her thin frame blending into the background of noise and chaos. Her eyes, large and dark, scanned the passing crowd with a mix of hope and resignation. Her clothes, once bright and colorful, were now reduced to faded rags. Her once hopeful eyes had seen too much hardship for someone so young. She clutched an old tin can, its surface dented and scratched, hoping for some spare change from the hurried passers-by who barely noticed her. The market was alive with activity. Vendors shouted about their fresh produce and colorful fabrics, while shoppers haggled over prices. The scent of spices mingled with the aroma of street food, creating a heady mix that hung in the warm afternoon air. Emily's stomach growled as the smell of grilled meat and fresh bread wafted past her. She shifted her position, trying to find a more comfortable spot on the hard pavement, and continued her silent plea for kindness. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows on the cobblestone street, Emily's attention was drawn to a sleek black car that rolled to a stop at the curb. Its glossy surface reflected the fading light, and it stood out among the more modest vehicles lining the street. Out stepped a man in an impeccably tailored suit, his shoes gleaming in the evening light. He was tall, with sharp features softened by a kind expression. His dark hair was neatly styled, and he carried himself with an air of purpose and confidence that turned heads as he walked. Emily watched him, her interest piqued. He seemed different from the usual market crowd, moving with an elegance and assurance that spoke of a different world. As he approached, her heart beat faster. Without really thinking, she instinctively reached out her hand, hoping for a coin or two to drop into her can. Instead of walking past her like everyone else, the man paused and looked down at her. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm, carrying a hint of curiosity. "Emily," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, the name feeling almost foreign on her tongue after so long of not being asked. Something in the man's eyes softened. He knelt down to her level, surprising everyone who watched. His presence, so close and attentive, made Emily feel both scared and strangely comforted. "Emily," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "Where are your parents?" She hesitated, the question bringing a lump to her throat. "Gone," she mumbled, her eyes dropping to the ground. The man sighed deeply, glancing around as if searching for something, perhaps the right words. He then did something that shocked Emily. He reached out and took her small, dirty hand in his own, the contrast between their worlds striking in that simple gesture. "Come with me," he said, his voice filled with a conviction that made it sound like a promise rather than a request. Fear and uncertainty gripped her. "Where?" she asked, her voice trembling with both hope and dread. "To a better place," he assured her, his eyes sincere. "You don't belong here." For reasons she couldn't explain, Emily felt a flicker of trust. There was something in the man's demeanor, a blend of authority and kindness, that made her believe him. She nodded slowly, and with that, he helped her to her feet and led her to his car. The onlookers, who had been pretending not to notice, now openly stared, curious about the wealthy stranger and the little beggar girl he had taken by the hand. The car ride was a blur for Emily. She sat in the plush leather seat, feeling out of place yet oddly safe. The man introduced himself as Mr. Carter. He spoke to her in a calm, reassuring tone, asking about her life, her needs, and her dreams, if she had any. Emily, overwhelmed and exhausted, could hardly keep up with his questions. But the warmth in his voice and the promise of a hot meal and a safe place to sleep made her feel a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in years. They arrived at a large house on the outskirts of the city, its imposing gates swinging open to welcome them. Inside, Emily was greeted by a kind-faced woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Thompson. She was Mr. Carter's housekeeper, and she led Emily to a small, cozy room where a bath and a set of clean clothes awaited her. The bed looked like a cloud compared to the hard ground she was used to, and she could hardly believe it was meant for her. That night, for the first time in a long while, Emily slept peacefully. The room was quiet and warm, and the fear of being moved along by police or bothered by drunkards was gone. She dreamed of her parents, of happier times, and of the mysterious man who had taken her from the streets. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of breakfast cooking. She dressed in the new clothes left for her and made her way downstairs, where she found Mr. Carter and Mrs. Thompson waiting for her. The table was set with more food than she had seen in months, and her stomach growled in anticipation. "Good morning, Emily," Mr. Carter said with a smile. "Did you sleep well?" Emily nodded, unable to find the words to express her gratitude. She sat at the table and began to eat, savoring every bite. Mr. Carter watched her with a look of satisfaction, as if seeing her eat was reward enough for him. "Emily," he began, "I want you to know that you're safe here. We'll take care of you and make sure you get the education and care you deserve." Emily looked up from her plate, her eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and hope. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Carter's expression grew serious. "Because I was once in your place," he said softly. "A kind stranger helped me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to pay it forward." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at the man who had changed her life in an instant. She couldn't believe her luck, but in that moment, she knew that her life would never be the same. Emily's days quickly began to transform from the grim routine of survival to something resembling a normal childhood. Mornings started with a hearty breakfast at a table laden with food, something she had once only dreamed of. Mrs. Thompson, ever the doting housekeeper, ensured Emily had everything she needed. She would help Emily with her clothes, teach her basic manners, and occasionally slip her a sweet treat with a conspiratorial wink. Mr. Carter, true to his word, arranged for Emily's education. On her first day of school, Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had never been inside a school building before, let alone attended classes. Her new uniform felt strange on her skin, but it also made her feel like she belonged. The school was a large, beautiful building with bright, welcoming classrooms. Children laughed and played in the courtyard, their carefree nature a stark contrast to the life Emily had known. Mr. Carter personally escorted her to the school. As they walked through the gates, he gave her an encouraging smile. "This is your chance to learn and grow, Emily. You can become anything you want," he said, his voice full of conviction. The teachers, briefed on her background, were kind and patient. They understood that Emily needed time to adjust and made extra efforts to help her catch up with her peers. At first, the other children were curious about the new girl. Emily felt their eyes on her, heard their whispers. But soon, a kind girl named Lily befriended her. Lily had an infectious smile and a heart full of compassion. She took Emily under her wing, showing her around and introducing her to the other children. Emily, with Lily's help, began to find her place. Days turned into weeks, and Emily flourished in her new environment. She discovered a love for reading and writing, often getting lost in the world of books. Her teachers marveled at her quick progress, and Mr. Carter would beam with pride whenever she brought home a good grade. In the evenings, Emily would sit with Mr. Carter in the study, where he would read to her or help her with her homework. These moments became the highlights of her day, filling her with a sense of belonging and purpose. One evening, as Emily sat at the kitchen table drawing, Mr. Carter approached her with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember the people in the market who were kind to you during your difficult days?" he asked. Emily nodded, recalling the few who had offered her a smile or a piece of bread. Mr. Carter then proposed something that made Emily's heart race with excitement. How would you like to go back to the market? Not to return to your old life, but to help those who are still struggling, he said. I want you to be part of my foundation, a charitable organization aimed at helping children in need, just like you were. The next day, they returned to the market, but this time, Emily was not the frightened, desperate girl she had once been. She stood beside Mr. Carter, holding his hand with confidence. They spoke to vendors, visited the spots where children gathered, and offered help in the form of food, clothes, and information about shelters and schools. News of their visit spread quickly, and soon, the same market that had witnessed Emily's struggles now saw her as a beacon of hope. She met with old friends, including a kind-hearted baker who had often slipped her a roll when no one was looking. The baker was delighted to see Emily's transformation and praised Mr. Carter for his kindness. Their charitable efforts expanded beyond the market. Mr. Carter's foundation began to provide scholarships, establish community centers, and offer medical care to those in need. Emily became a symbol of what was possible with a little help and a lot of compassion. Her story inspired many to contribute to the cause, and the foundation grew rapidly. Years passed, and Emily blossomed into a confident young woman. She graduated with honors and decided to pursue a career in social work, driven by a desire to help others as she had been helped. Mr. Carter and Mrs. Thompson watched with pride as Emily took on a leadership role in the foundation, her passion and dedication ensuring its continued success. One evening, after a particularly rewarding day at the foundation, Emily sat with Mr. Carter in the garden of their home. The stars shone brightly above them, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Emily turned to Mr. Carter and said, "Thank you, not just for rescuing me, but for believing in my potential and giving me the tools to shape my own future." Mr. Carter smiled, his eyes reflecting the same warmth and kindness that had first drawn her to him. "Seeing you grow and succeed is the greatest reward I could have ever hoped for," he replied. Emily, with tears of gratitude in her eyes, promised, "I will carry forward the legacy of compassion and generosity that transformed my life." And so, Emily's journey from a beggar girl on the streets to a beacon of hope for many became a testament to the incredible power of kindness and the enduring impact. I hope you liked this video. I put a link down below about something very cool. Go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe.